everyone, today I will share with you how to make a simple A-line crew neck dress for our AG doll. I will share with you a hand sewing technique and machine sewing technique. So let us get started. For basic tools, we need paper scissors, fabric scissors, pins, chalk or pen, thread, needle, glue gun, tape measure, and of course the sewing machine. For fabric, we need about 1/4 of a yard for a dress. I bought this piece from Walmart for less than $3. We will need a little bit of Velcro for the closure. For the pattern, I developed this pattern and you can download and print out from my blog, so it's free. Just click on the link under the description box to print the file. This is the center front of the pattern piece and it's called the dress front, and you cut one piece, lay flat. Also, the center front line is also the grain line where you should place your pattern, so it's parallel to the edge, and those are the notches to indicate the seam allowance. This is the back, so for the back you should make two pieces to cut two, and I also include the front and the back facing. This is how I transfer the pattern onto cardstock, so it's easier for me to use later on for multiple uses. So that's how you place a green line parallel to the edge of the fabric. Trace it out with chalk and make some cut. I'll show you the notches later on. I didn't include the bow on the pattern, but I will give you the measurements under the description box as well, and see the grain lines being cut diagonally. That's how it is. So here are the notches. The notches indicate the seam allowance, how much you sew in from the edge, also to match the pieces together, and this is the extra fabric. So here's a closer look at the notches as well. When you see the double notches, you know it's the back piece. The first option is the hand sew option for those who don't have a sewing machine, so I'll start sewing the shoulder seam and the side seam first. First, I prepare the needle and the thread, and I do a double thread and make a knot at the end. So starting out at the shoulder seam, right side together and right at the notches, I make the stitches to be as fine as about 1/16 of an inch or 1 millimeter. And with my needle, I sew up and down. So when I reach towards the end, I loop the thread around the edge a couple of times to secure the seam and cut out the thread. So I repeat the same method for the other shoulder seam and apply the same technique for both the side seams as well. And this is how it looks after 4 seams are being sewn together. Now let's finish the neckline and the armhole. So I use the fabric scissors just to make clips, little clips around the curved line with about 1/8 of an inch deep. And the clips are around 1/4 of an inch apart. Then I turn the edge in by about 3/16 of an inch, just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, and make the stitches. So this is how I make the stitches. Make sure to make a wider stitch, about 1/4 of an inch on the wrong side, and very fine stitch on the right side, so maybe like catching a couple of yarns. So that's how it looks like. Wider stitches on the wrong side and fine stitches on the right side. So keep going around until I reach towards the end. I use my finger just to press the edge to be flat and smooth. And then don't forget to make that double loop around the edge just to secure it and cut the thread. And apply the same technique for both of the armholes. I figure it might be hard to hand sew the male side of the Velcro, so it's better to use hot glue just to glue the male side down. And for the female side, it's softer, so I'm going to use the hand sewing needle and sew around the edge. And for this Velcro, I use about 3/16 of an inch width. And the length is where you measure from the neckline to the double notches at the center back. So when both of the Velcro are applied on, I match them together. And close the center back seam with the hand sewing needle. So I start from the bottom at the notches and make my way up to the second notches in the center back. And turn the dress inside out. It's almost done. So again, I attach it together, press it out. And then I make one more stitch line just to close the soft side of the Velcro. And remember to use a technique that I show you when sewing top stitching, a wider stitch on the wrong side and a very nice and fine stitch on the right side. And that's it. So we're left with the last step to do. On the curved line of the hem, I clip it a few times as well. And just the same technique for the top stitching or the neckline and the armhole, the wider stitch on the wrong side and finer stitch on the right side. I use that and apply it on the hem. And yeah, we're getting there. So this is it. It looks not bad at all. So just one thing to keep in mind when you open and close the back, just to use a finger and hold out the male side of the Velcro because I use glue, so I don't want it to fall apart. And there are some options that you can use to embellish this style. Here are just some examples. As per the style that I made in my spring 2017 collection, I made a really big bow at the center front, so I cut out 3 rectangle pieces and then sew it around at the center. I leave about 1.5 of an inch opening, and once that's done, I turn it inside out and then use a needle and poke out the corners. For this huge bow style, I don't want it to wing horizontally. I want it to droop down a little bit, so I make a little pleat at the center and I make the sewing stitches and make a gathers, and just apply the same thing for the second piece and place it on top of one another. I poke the needle through all of the layers so that the 2 pieces can stay together, and for the little piece at the center, I fold it 2 times so I don't have to sew it, and then from one edge I place it on the wrong side of the bow and turn it over to cover the center stitching line of the bow, and at the back I close it, sew it a few times, and once it's done I place it at the center front, maybe like 1 inch below the neckline depending on how you want it. Half of an inch placement from the neckline would turn out really nice as well, so that's how it looks like. Let's get to the machine sewing part. So first I would start by sewing the shoulder seams together and then the side seam. As well as the facing, I will sew the shoulder seams as well and the side seam as well. And also I'll sew the bow parts. So let's start out with the facing. I'm sewing around the side seam and then the 2 shoulder seam and then the other side seam. The same thing for our dress. Remember to leave 1.5 of an inch opening at the center of the bow part So once all the sewing are done, I go to the serger and start by serging the facing with the center back, edges, and the hem, as well as the dress. So I serge the side seam, the center back, and the hem. So I'm gonna leave out the neckline and the armhole. So I go back to the sewing machine, and now we're gonna attach the neckline together. So right side together around the neckline. I will start by sewing around the neckline, the two pieces together from the center back. And with the guide of the notches, I make about a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch stitch around the neckline. I use fabric scissors to clip around the curved line of the necklines, and once that's done, I pull all of the seam allowance towards the facing and place it on the machine and make a fine edge stitch. And the stitching line should be on the facing with about 1/16 of an inch from the seam. So this way it will give you a very nice and clean neckline finish look, and that's how it looks like up close. The armhole finishing is a little bit tricky, so first on the right hand side, use 2 fingers and hold on at the shoulder seam, and then turn it towards the wrong side and still matching the seam together, and use your fingers and kind of turn it around to match your right side together. Right side and match the shoulder seam and pull out as much as possible. So you can see that the side seam is being sandwiched inside, and then place that little amount and make a stitch line as far as possible. It's impossible to go all the way around, so just make a stitch line as far as possible while you can, and then we'll stop it. So here I managed to make about 1/2 of an inch seam. And then I take out from the machine, and then I pull out the rest of the part, because a lot of stuffs are being sandwiched in, and once I manage to pull everything out, I make another stitching line, so I keep going until I can manage to sew around the rest of the armhole. This is the only part that's a little bit tricky. Other than that, all of the other following steps will be very easy and very straightforward. So apply the same step for the other armhole as well, and you could also use fabric scissors just to clip around the curved line, and that's how it looks like when it's done, very nice and clean. So now we're going to attach the Velcro together by machine. So what I do, I just sew around the male side and the female side. So sew around the edge of the Velcro. Again, when both of the pieces are attached, I close it together and make a seam at the center, close the center back seam. And once that's done, I make a top stitch to secure the female side of the Velcro down. And once that's done, I finish the hem. and that's how it is. For the bow option, I use the same as the hand sewing technique one to attach the pieces together and attach it onto the dress. So it's done, and this is how it looks like. So if you have any other style that you would like to learn how to make, just comment below and I will check it out to see if I can develop the pattern and I'll share with you. Also, if you want to learn some DIY no-sew options, just let me know as well. And that's it. So thank you so much for spending your time with me again. Please give this video a big thumbs up, and for the new people, please press the subscribe button and I shall see you soon. Bye!